Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Pokélore podcast. Today we're discussing the Pokemon Tauros. I'm Professor Cedar,
And I'm Professor Pine.
and let's dive right into it.
Absolutely.
Tauros is a normal type Pokemon that first galloped onto the scene in Generation 1. Known for its untamed spirit, Tauros doesn't evolve into or from any other Pokemon, but its connection to Miltank paints it as a natural counterpart in the Pokemon world. I guess the first thing right out of the gate here is that Tauros is an all-male Pokemon, and Miltank is an all-female Pokemon. Obviously, Tauros is modeled a lot like a bull. Tauros is a lot like a cow, Miltank is a lot like a cow. So there's that, like, they're almost like separate species, but they seem to be the male and female counterpart to each other, which is
Now, are you
kind of an
just
oddity.
talking, yeah, are you just talking looks wise though, or is this like an actual Pokemon
So
factoid?
it does, yeah, it doesn't explain or explicitly state that you need to breed a Tauros with a milk tank. That part's actually not super clear, but um, I mean, presumably, yeah. Some Pokemon look the same regardless if they're male or female.
Right.
And some look very different, like Nidoking and Nidoqueen, but they almost are identified as separate Pokemon, right? And they have their own
Mhm.
evolutionary lines. And I don't know that Tauros and Miltank are explicitly considered the same species or whether or not they breed together, but we do know that Tauros are all male and Miltank are all female.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a strange thing biologically speaking.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if that would, like, assuming it is true that you would say take a Tauros and a Miltank to the Pokemon daycare, which I find it very strange that they have a daycare where Pokemon do that. Um, Assuming that's true, I wonder if the same would be true for uh, Buffalont, where he's like a buffalo Pokemon.
Yeah. Again, I don't know, yeah, how all these Pokemon like intermix. Um or the weird thing too with species is that typically in order to be defined as a distinct species, there's a component of needing to be able to self-replicate and breed.
Yeah.
Um and again, that line isn't super clear between Pokemon about speciation. And the whole concept that we're talking about different male and different female anatomy is described as sexual dimorphism, is when a species kind of has traits that clearly identified as male and female. So if that is the case, then like it's simply a case of extreme dimorphism where they look almost like separate species.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
That makes sense. It
just an
it just
interesting.
kind of yeah, it just kind of begs the question of like other Pokemon that you might find on like a ranch. Like there are some people that keep like elk and deer and stuff like that. So what about Deerling? What about Stantler? What about Buffalont? Right?
Yeah,
Things like this.
yeah, and we'll
So
dive into each of those on their own episodes too. This, like
yeah.
I said, this does come up a lot with a bunch of other species. Um, Genghis Khan is one of them that gets kind of strange with that. Nidoking and Nidoqueen, which I mentioned. Like, there's a few that um, have differences that we'll dive into on their respective episodes. But just wanted to point that one out for Taurus here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, carrying on. Tauros is a powerful quadruped bovine Pokemon. Its body covered in light brown fur with a thick, darker brown mane around its neck. A hump sits proudly on its shoulders, while its rounded muzzle is marked by a dark brown nose and sharp rectangular eyes. Um, Three gray bumps on its forehead, and a pair of curved gray horns protrude. Each of its three black tails ends in a tuft of fur, twitching restlessly while each foot is capped with a single gray hoof. Tauros is a male-only species, a rarity in the Pokemon world, even though the Pokemon itself is fairly common.
Yeah. Um, Interesting to note for those who are watching instead of just listening, we do have a picture of a Tauros up on screen here. Um, it's not super clear to me, at least, what these bumps are on its forehead. It looks like it's made of the same material as its horns.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure if you know anything more about those.
I don't, but I know we're talking Pokemon here, but isn't it true that for Warhammer, they have something where it's like they get these little notches in the sides of their heads for years of service or something?
Yeah, they're called service bolts. Space Marines
Right.
get them in
So,
their heads. Yeah.
right. So I wonder if maybe this is something kind of similar, like a brand from the person who owns it, or maybe it's every 100 battles it wins, it gets a new bump or something. I don't know. It's just always been there.
Yeah. Um, I know that in the wild they have them too, so I don't know that it's any kind of owner situation.
Mm,
Like you can see them in these
well,
wild ones there.
nope. Those are not wild.
Oh, you know what episode that picture's from?
In that episode, that's where Ash
Oh,
catches something ridiculous like 300 Tauros or 100 Tauros or something like that.
yeah, like a whole herd of them.
Yeah, which is weird because you never actually see that in the episode. It just apparently he
So
did it.
actually, I think that episode was hyper censored, and I could be wrong about this. I'm just trying to remember an article I read. Because there were a lot of guns featured in that episode because they were on a safari,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and because of the censorship, they kind of like mangled the episode, so it wasn't super clear as to how they got into that situation. It just kind of like jumps around a lot. Um,
Yeah, that's right. I
yeah,
didn't even know he had a Tauros until it got to the Pokemon League. And then he throws it out and you went, when?
yeah.
Because this
When
is
did this
coming from a
happen?
guy. Well, in the Indigo League, when he finally makes it to the Pokemon League, he just brings out a Tauros randomly.
You've never heard or seen of? Yeah,
Yeah, it's a pretty cool episode, but it made no sense because you never saw him catch it. And considering Ash runs into all these different Pokemon in the movies and the episodes, and every single one he goes, huh, I'm supposed to be completing a Pokedex, but I don't really want to. And then he just walks away from it without catching it. I figured he did the same with this, and apparently not. So,
hmm,
yeah,
right.
very strange.
Yeah. Well, in any case, these bumps on his forehead do look like it's made of the same material as its horns, which might be a keratin of some kind or a bone. So bone plate.
Yeah, it could just be something that sticks out too. There are different animals in the animal kingdom that have that, right? Elephants, rhinos,
Yeah. Yeah,
stuff
that's
like
kind of what
that.
I'm thinking. It's more like a rhino type feature where it has these little horn bumps on its nose.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, could be.
yeah. All right. Known for its fierce and untamed nature, Tauros often literally whips itself into a frenzy by thrashing itself with its three tails. This serves as a clear warning. Once the charge begins, there's no stopping it. Tauros becomes an unstoppable force, plowing through anything in its path, even large boulders. Herds of Tauros roam freely across the open plains and grasslands, engaging in wild battles with one another, locking horns. The leader of the herd wears its battle scars like a badge of honor, a veteran of countless confrontations. I guess that's another interesting factoid is that Tauros do roam around in big herds of Tauros. So again, that weirdness about like milk tanks are not, typically creatures in herds are like family groups, right?
Hmm.
But in this case, are just big male herds.
Hmm.
There's no mention of any milk
No,
tanks or anything with them.
yeah, no, I don't know very much about farms, but isn't it true that you have to separate the male and the females?
Well, yeah, if you don't want to breed them, typically you will separate male and female, and you won't even need that many bulls either, right? You just have one or two bulls that will breed all the cows in your herd,
Yeah,
and a lot of that is around domestication, right? But in the wild, a lot of herds, obviously would have a mix of males,
yeah,
females, and
yeah, I
and
suppose.
calflings, right?
Hmm.
So
Very
yeah,
true. Okay. Hmm. So, in the tropical region of Aloha, Tauros is notably calmer, likely due to the soothing climate. Here, the tradition of using Tauros as ride Pokemon was born, and it's still practiced today. However, in Galar, Tauros is a far more unpredictable species with little tolerance for being ridden. Tauros is also the only known Pokemon that can learn the powerful move Raging Bull, further showcasing its unrelenting strength and raw power. It's said that once it charges, it cannot stop until it hits something, but it can only do so in a straight line. It's powerful enough to topple thick trees, which it does to calm itself down. Which isn't that just psychotic by itself?
Yeah. Yeah. Like it highlights how, and again, like the temperament of bulls are often, very aggressive. And that's obviously what they're leaning on with the Tauros's temperament. The other feature too that we kind of skimmed over is that it whips itself with its three tails to get itself like into a rage.
Yes.
But yeah, like it's so angry all the time and it needs to hit stuff in order to like bring itself down to a more calm level.
But this is the thing, is it doesn't say that he's angry all the time. It says he whips himself to make himself angry and then calms himself down by crashing into things. So it just seems like it's some sort of weird ritual or kink or something like that. It's very strange, but
that's
very
for
cool.
our late night Pokemon podcast.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Pokemon after midnight.
It is cool too that it is cool that the Alola region too. There are Tauros who have saddles and stuff on them that you can ride. So there are some more calm ones too.
Mm-hmm. That's a game I never played before. I never even knew that they had the Tauros riding Pokemon. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to make that my next game.
I was going to include a picture, and I should have done it. It has a cool little saddle on him. Side note on the picture, too, here. They were animated in the other form, but when I upload them, for whatever reason, the animations don't work. So
that's okay. We forgive you.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Right. In the region of Paldea, Tauros has evolved into 3 distinct regional forms, each with its own unique flair. The combat breed, a pure fighting type, embodies raw power and strength. The blaze breed, a fiery fusion of fighting and fire types, charges toward with blazing intensity. Lastly, the aqua breed is a combination of fighting and water types. It flows like a tidal wave, ready to strike like an unstoppable force. Each is a brutal and specialized adaptation of a wild bull spirit that roams the plains. All 3 share striking appearances, draped in dark gray fur with thick black manes, sharp gray horns, and each distinct between breeds. Black hooves and dark gray tails tipped with black. Collectively known as the wild bulls of Paldea, these Tauros are as varied as the forces they represent. Yeah, so these are the 3 breeds here. We'll describe each one here in a minute.
Yeah. I'm just sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. I'm just wondering about if these different types do the exact same weird ritual thing, like where they whip themselves and calm themselves down, because I'm trying to think now you don't just have a Tauros, it's going to destroy your house, it's also going to set it on fire or drown you and your family and then calm itself down.
I don't advise you to put bulls in your house for starters. Regardless of whether or not it can. Right.
A ranch in Paldea. Just imagine that.
Yeah, fair enough. Just setting fire to your fields, and the other one's like flooding your other livestock.
Exactly. These don't seem like Pokemon that want to be owned.
A lot of same. That is its whole own sub debate about what Pokemon are reasonable to try and tame, which is questionable.
Sorry. I had to interject that. Okay. So, combat breed. The combat breed of Paldean Tauros is a powerhouse of raw muscle with short, almost straight horns and a mane and tails that echo its Cantonian counterpart. Its body is a fortress of thick, powerful muscle designed for brutal close-quarters combat. These Tauros are relentless in battle, using their horns to pierce and strike at any weakness. their aggressive nature making them a force to be feared. And the Blaze breed Tauros is an inferno made in the flesh. Its sharp horns curve forward at right angles, and its mane is a jagged crown streaked with fiery red. The intertwined black tails only add to its fiery aura, but it's the searing heat that it exhales that truly sets it apart. When this Tauros taps into its fire energy, the bumps and horns on its head they'll glow a dangerous red, reaching temperatures of over 1800 degrees Fahrenheit or 1000 degrees Celsius for people that live anywhere else aside from America. The scorched earth it leaves in its wake is nothing compared to the suffering of anyone unfortunate enough to be gored by these blazing horns, and they will feel both the cut and the burn at the same time. A brutal combo only the toughest can endure.
Yeah, so they're a decent breed to have, at least, if not in captivity, but to fight other Pokemon with. Just let it
Sure.
gore its enemies with the horns.
Yeah. I'm curious about why this one's tails are interlocked like that.
Yeah, it's part of the design feature. The fire breed, its tails are always kind of intertwined, and then the water breed ones, you'll read it here in a sec, but its tails can act almost like a propeller, so you see them, they're kind of in a
Oh, yeah, I
propeller.
do see that.
Yeah,
Hmm. I'd never
yeah.
noticed that before. That's weird.
And then obviously the regular Tauros tails are just kind of independently floating there.
Uh-huh. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll handle the aqua breed next then. I want to hear more about these tails. Aqua breed Tauros stands as a paradox, built for the sea but with the fury of a land bull. Its horns are uniquely twisted, pointing upward yet capable of rotating backwards, each crowned with bulbous forms and a hole at the tip. The mane drapes like a beard, dotted with five teardrop-shaped blue accents, a sign of its mastery over the water. Its straight tails bend and twist into a propeller shape, allowing this breed to swim with surprising grace. With high body fat that lets it float effortlessly, aqua breed Tauros uses high-pressure jets of water blasted from its horns to strike, piercing through enemies with an unrelenting force. As it charges, the bumps and horns glow a ghostly blue, a warning of the watery devastation that's about to follow. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's cool. They have like different sub breeds that all kind of look a little different. You have like the basic Tauros, brown fur, upward turned horns. And then you have the shorter horned fighting Tauros, then the fire Tauros with its front facing horns, and the aqua Tauros with its rotatable but upward facing horns. A lot of that, like a lot of different cattle breeds, actually are identifiable through their horns. I'm not a rancher by any means, so if there's any ranchers out there listening to me and know more specifics about it, they can definitely correct me. But yeah, you have things like Texas Longhorns who have like the really long horns, as their name suggests. But you have like different like Spanish bulls who have shorter kind of forward facing horns. You have all kinds of different cattle breeds, and their horns often give away the type of breed that they are. So that's a cool feature that they've obviously adopted into the different kinds of Tauros.
Yeah. Now, can you go back to the normal type Tauros from
Yep.
Kanto? Okay, so you have this type of bull. Like I'm just looking at the horns on it.
Yeah.
It almost seems like I don't know. I'm not a rancher either, but maybe like an American type bull. They just seem kind of like curved, normal. And then go to the Paldean ones. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so see these ones, especially the fire and the water ones, almost look like they are the Spanish bulls.
Yeah, I don't know enough about cattle because there's even within those groups there are like tons. Like the Texas Longhorn is the only one that comes to mind immediately. Um, is very identifiable by its horns, but other bulls, like there are other bulls in America and there are other bulls in Spain and all over
Hmm.
the world, right? You have like the Japanese bulls where they get that meat, and there's like Belgian bulls that are super jacked. Um, like obviously it's oversimplified for the purpose of this Pokemon of only the
Yeah,
four types, but
I just found that kind of interesting, given that Paldea's got like a Spanish kind of theme to that region. So
yeah,
I was thinking that this must be based on Spaniard bulls, but
yeah, and that is definitely like you're 100% correct. Paldea is very much like Spain and Portugal, right? Like that kind of region.
right.
And obviously, with that heavy bull theme, everyone knows about Spanish bullfighting and running with the bulls, and the historical and cultural um, impact that bulls have on Spanish history, which is obviously very much like what Paldea is all about. And even the name Tauros comes from the Latin, um, or sorry, the
Spanish.
okay. um, yeah, Tauros is both in Latin and in Greek, and like a lot of obviously the Romantic languages that are Latin based will recognize the root for bull essentially. And bulls also played really strong historical impact in Greek and Roman society. You have the constellation of Tauros, which comes from even more ancient times. Um, things like Akkad in Assyria and Babylon were actually the ones that created, well, not created, but identified the Tauros constellation. Um, so yeah, there's obviously a lot of like inspiration for Spain in that. Um, the aqua breed, like we were mentioning, kind of that they're obviously very bull-like, but they're also kind of a mix of other ungulates. Um, like you also have like water buffalo, obviously could be inspiration. Bison have that like thick furry collar that Tauros have. So they seem like a little bit of a blend. You were mentioning there was another Pokemon too that might be a little more uh, bison related
Yeah, Buffalont.
or buffalo. Yeah,
Yeah,
buffalo. Yeah,
yeah.
and there's a whole discussion about buffalo and bison too that we'll maybe save for the buffalo episode. But
What are they different?
there's a whole thing about it. we'll save that discussion for that episode.
Okay, because
Um,
I
an-
thought they were the same thing.
it depends how. Yeah, it depends how you classify them.
Okay.
Um, the other interesting thing too is Tauros actually looks a lot like an Auroch, which is like a Paleolithic ancestor to the modern cattle.
Okay.
And kind of what you were mentioning about the horns and things is kind of more so what it looks like. It'd be cool if that's a cool name, by the way, Auroch, Aurochs.
Oh man, imagine if they had a Pokemon named that and it was just
Right. That's
like,
what I was gonna say. That name is
oh,
actually
that'd be cool.
really, really cool for a Pokemon. But
Hmm.
yeah, that could also be one of the inspirations. Like I said, it's just like a hodgepodge of different bovine slash ungulates, um, more generally. But
Hmm. And they
yeah,
all taste amazing.
all beef is
Probably.
good beef. Yeah,
That's right.
I haven't eaten a Tauros, but that's another whole thing we'll probably save for foods of the Pokemon world episode. But there are
Ooh,
questions
yeah.
about what Pokemon are okay to eat and which ones are likely raised to be food. Um, yeah, but we'll save that discussion for another episode.
Yeah, yeah, that might be a good idea. That seems like it's going to spark a whole debate.
Yeah.
So now, did you know for these Paldean Tauros that there is a specific tradition, um, yeah, I guess kind of surrounding them and a village that raises them?
Okay.
Okay, so now I will say before I start on this that I haven't been able to find out that whether or not this is fact or like like a fan base theory, but everything that I did find on it seems to kind of imply that could be factual, maybe. So I'll
Plausible.
tell you about
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So in the Paldea region, there's a unique and particular tradition surrounding the Tauros, the bull Pokemon, where boys in this town are raised in unloving households with cold and distant parents. The boys play together and grow up together, but they're neglected and treated as lesser than by every adult in the town. And this way of life forces the boys to learn independence, right from wrong through negative reinforcement, survival, as well as mental and physical strength right from birth. And this all changes on a boy's 15th birthday. From the morning that the boy's birthday starts, they're showered with love and affection that they've been denied for the first 15 years of their life. Like they've never had a hug, they've never had a goodnight kiss or a bedtime story, any of that, and now it's all of a sudden happening. The boys are thrilled. They're laughing, they're smiling, and experiencing love for the first time. They enjoy a day with their parents and a feast of all the boys' favorite foods it's made up for dinner. The following day, the mothers bring their sons to a local barn. And the boys have no idea why they're there, and they have no idea what's inside. They just know that this is time with my parents. Like this is going to be a fun outing. Um, they're so happy to be there, and they're so happy to finally be receiving love and attention from their moms that they don't care. They enter the barn and they start hearing grunts and snorts and hooves on the floor. And going further and further into the barn, they see rows and rows of stables with Tauros inside. And the mothers ask their sons to pick a Tauros, and the boys excitedly choose one with the thought in their head that they're getting their very own Tauros. So, like, this is going to be maybe their very first Pokemon for their own Pokemon adventure. But they couldn't be more wrong. The mothers explain to their sons that they have to wrangle the Tauros that they choose by lassoing it and riding it. Some boys gulp as anxiety and fear grip them, wondering how they will ever lasso and ride such a large Pokemon, while others rise to the challenge brave and excited. But whatever these boys are feeling, they ultimately accept the challenge to impress their mothers and keep the newfound love that they're experiencing. Only a few boys manage to successfully wrangle the Tauros. The others who fail are met with shameful looks from their mothers before being left alone in the barn. The boys beg for one more chance, but it's too late. The mothers have left, closed the door behind them, and the curse of Tauros has begun. As the boys pick themselves up off of the floor after their loss to chase after their mothers, they suddenly find it hard to stand. Stumbling, they start hearing the clopping of hooves, and the boys look down and find their hands and feet replaced with hooves. Pain begins overtaking their bodies as their bone structure changes, and they find themselves standing on four legs. Their faces change and horns begin sprouting from their heads. Their cries for help become moos, grunts, and snorts. The boys have become the very thing they were trying to wrangle. They've become a Tauros. Shortly after the transformation is complete, mothers enter back into the barn and return the Tauros to their individual pens. Afterwards, a celebration is thrown for the boys who were able to successfully wrangle their Tauros. They are welcomed into society and treated as young men and equals.
Huh. That's very dark.
Yeah, I kind of rotated this entire episode on its head, didn't I?
Yeah. Pokemon does that though. There's a few Pokemon that have very disturbing implications.
Right.
Probably save that for Halloween episode, but
Yeah.
interesting.
Now, it doesn't say in any of the research that I did on this tradition whether or not there's something that turns the boys into the water type Tauros or the fire type or the fighting type. It just says that they turn into
Yeah.
Tauros. But yeah, it's kind of a
Yeah.
crazy
It could also
tradition.
Yeah, and it could also be like legendary too, where it's like it's said that this is what happens, but whether or not it's true, it's kind of like debatable. Like
Yeah,
within the mythos, right?
yeah, it could be.
Um,
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, it goes back. You know, there's kind of echoes of the Minotaur and like Crete, right? Bulls also playing a significant role in
yes,
that culture too. You have their gymnasts that would like, jump around bulls and things, jump over them, and then you have the mythology of the Minotaur that lives in a labyrinth, and people are sent in as kind of like sacrifices to it.
yeah. Now, do you know if there's any sort of Spain-related bull tradition, kind of like a Minotaur or anything like
No,
that?
not.
Any reason that they might maybe do the running of the bulls to begin with, aside from just being psycho?
I'm sure there is a tradition there. I'm not familiar with it. Ironically enough, I am Mexican with some faint Spanish roots, but I don't actually know a lot of Spanish culture from Spain, other than
Hmm.
like what the average person knows about bullfighting or running with the bulls. I do know that in bullfighting, and I don't know whether or not this is true or just kind of like a misconception, a common misconception, but bulls aren't actually provoked by the color red. As often, people will show bullfighters with like a red cape. It's the motion that sets bulls off. It's
Right.
the waving that causes them to try and charge at them. And I don't know if everyone knows this. It's become more common knowledge now in recent times, but bullfighters typically actually fight with the bull and like kill a bull as part of the tradition,
Hmm.
um, as well as with the running of the bulls. They often fire darts and things down at the bulls. So
What? Do they really?
yeah, at least I've seen footage of that. Maybe it's not running with the bull specifically. Maybe it's another bull related activity.
Hmm.
But I've seen footage of that as well.
Huh. That's pretty
Um,
crazy.
yeah, it would be interesting to look up. Definitely would be interested in researching more bull culture. Actually, fun fact: a lot of ranching culture comes from Spain, and they imported it to the Americas. So, like all cowboy culture actually originated, in Spanish colonies in Mexico, and then migrated up through Texas and like all through like the cowboy states, all the way to Canada, and then in Alberta, there's a strong cowboy tradition. But all
Huh.
that started, and like cowboys specifically wrangle cattle, right?
Yeah.
Um, ranching is a lot of cattle based activity, and all that comes from Spanish culture. Interestingly
Huh.
enough, yeah,
Interesting.
they
I didn't know
they're the
that.
ones that yeah they first brought these cattle and bulls to the Americas. So
Hmm.
interesting fact. A couple of cool little interesting facts too while we're on the topic. In Japan, the Tauros in Pokemon is called the Kentauros, which is how the Greeks what Greeks call centaurs. So again, another
Okay.
kind of mythological tie there. And then the other thing too is Paldea, the Spanish region. That's like again that very Spanish and bull culture. I don't know if this is just a coincidence because the Tauros um, constellation has the Pleiades um, cluster in it, and now again, this is just virtually on how they sound. There's no real mythological association that I could find between the
Hmm.
Pleiades star cluster and any other mythology. Like it has its own mythology, but none of it,
Hmm.
other than being located in the Tauros constellation, I could see any ties with.
Interesting.
But could just be
Yeah.
they saw that name and thought it was cool, or it's just totally coincidental that they have similar sounding words.
Huh. Yeah,
And
that
I'm
sounds
not
pretty cool.
totally sure where the name Paldea even comes from. Aldea is village in Spanish. Um,
Like, is that what it means? Paldea means town
Aldea,
in Spanish?
Aldea.
Aldea. Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, it sounds like they might have. Hmm?
I don't know where the P part, like if they're just changing it a little bit, or if there was like a merger of another word there. But obviously,
Yeah.
Aldea is probably where they're drawing that word from.
Yeah, that's something that we might have to read up on a little bit more. I know for each region in the Pokemon world, they tend to draw from some sort of a culture, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, trying to remember which one it was. I think it was Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield had a very like British feel to it, like in the way that
Yeah.
they were talking, like the way the script is written for each character. When they talk, it's very like um, I don't know my English accents very well, but like one of those like oi, cup of water, right, like kind of thing like that. So yeah, but that's actually how they talk, and I thought it was really weird. I was going like, what are you trying to say? Like they just talk weird. Um, and I remember playing through Scarlet and Violet. It's it almost like I swear I remember hearing people say like "hola" and stuff like that in there. So it has like a very Spanish feel. So it could be that they took that um, Aldea and then maybe combined it with Pleiades, like you're saying. I don't know. We would have to research it and find out what their
Yeah.
inspiration is. But there's always one for every region.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah. And
Um.
like just I
But
remember my first trip to Japan when I went there, um, stopping off and having like a quick snack, and they had this like a big informational board, and it said that we were in the Kanto region, and I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. So
you didn't see
they
any.
just took from their own backyard and then kind of went out from there.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say you didn't see any wild Pokemon though, eh?
no, not yet. Just in the
No.
Pokemon Center.
That's when you're
Yeah,
hallucinating.
yeah.
Um. Last real quick factoid I just want to throw out there is that the tails of the Tauros, how it whips itself and how it's like a like three tails. Obviously, very much taken from a scourge or a cat o' nine tails whip,
Mhm.
um, which usually like a multi-thonged whip. So
Yeah,
just a little feature too.
yeah. Kinky.
I guess that's for a
Yeah,
late night
yeah.
Pokemon. All right.
Um, yeah. Well, that's all I had.
Any no final thoughts on our friend the Tauros?
No, but I do think that it would be a good Pokemon research trip if you and I went and actually partook in a running with the bulls. If you're down,
I might try a lot of things once, but I don't know if I would try that.
you just have to be faster than the bull. It's not hard.
Or faster than the slowest guy.
Yeah, there you go. That's all you got to do.
All right. Okay. Well, with that, then we will see you guys on the next episode.
All right.
Thanks for
Until
tuning
next
in.
time, guys. Bye.